When you see yourself as a female founder, what is the advice which you want to give out to the female founders?
Being very open here, I don't think that women are going to reach the level that we need to be at to be truly considered legit founders in technology until you are the founder. Web3 in particular, it is very heavily male dominated. And there are comments that are made to women for sure that are not wonderful. What I would say is this: for women who they hear that and they're affected by it, as you get more senior in your career, one of the most important skill sets you can have is to truly understand what people are thinking and feeling without them actually saying it.
Web 2 or Web 3?
Well,
Hey, hi Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining in today. I know
hi,
you have been a lot occupied with Saga Multiverse, which was going on the hackathon as well. And I know as a founder, it's tough to make your time to come and on such kind of episode and record yourself. But again, thank you so much for joining us today for POB. It is going to mean a lot as more and more founders will start seeing this video going forward. To get started with you, I would love to ask very simple question.
yeah.
Why did you join Web3? Even before asking about yourself, I'll come on to about yourself, but
Yeah.
why the hell Web3?
I think all of us ask ourselves this question as founders in this space, probably at least once a week. It's like, what was I thinking? I mean, I love the space, obviously, it's why we're here. But yeah, it's a crazy space. And I've been in Web3 for about 8 years now. So why did I join originally? So I think for all of us in this industry, it's been a journey, right? And when I first joined, it was for a very rational reason, which was throughout my entire career, I've been primarily interested in developing market economies and how is it that we're able to lift these countries and their people up to join the wider global economic system. And when I came across blockchain, this was back in sort of 2013, 2014 timeframe, I thought this is the answer. And this is the answer. I mean, we've talked about more traditional fintech helping some of these societies leapfrog and get to newer forms of financial infrastructure, but blockchain is the cutting edge infra that we really need going into the future. And so that was my motivation getting into this space. And because of that, I met Zaki and then another co-founder, so 3 co-founders in all for our first crypto startup ever, which is called SkuChain, and focused more on the DeFi space. So I was providing short-term liquidity to small, medium-sized businesses, and I was co-founder COO there for 4 years. Got the platform to about 5 billion in annual volume. Our biggest markets were definitely Asia, a little bit of LATAM by the time I left, but primarily in Asia. And some of the work that we did there was incredibly fulfilling, and it was fulfilling the mission that I had originally come into Web3 with, which was how do we help developing market economies really strengthen their presence in the global economy. Now, having said that, I will say that I think my answer has changed over time because now right?
Yes, this is what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. So before it was all about finance, really, and still, finance is at the heart of Web3. Without DeFi and without liquidity, this industry does not work. Still very, very important. But I think what has been so heartening is that people have really taken blockchain as a technology and applied it to so many different use cases. And I remember years ago when we first started, a lot of these use cases were not viable, probably because the technology just wasn't there to make the use cases viable. But now it's advanced significantly. So that's great to see. And now I'm doing Saga, and Saga doesn't really focus on DeFi. It is a layer 1, so it is infra, but it is focused primarily on gaming and entertainment. So very different from developing market economies, although one would argue that some of those societies actually latch onto gaming and entertainment more than others. But what you find is that, with Web3, the anthem that connects all of us is the anthem of self-determination. I think all of us are here and building because we value things like freedom, the ability to really set your own path and to move forward according to your own terms. And so, Prashant, it's a very long answer. Thank you for being patient and listening to all of it. But I would say that I started off in Web3 for very rational reasons. Any business person would understand, okay, so you want to get into finance to really democratize services around the financial industry. That's That's incredibly rational and valuable and understandable. But then it gets fuzzier. And I think ultimately you stay in this industry because of much deeper emotional ties. And self-determination for me is why I get up every day and work in this industry.
So let me add few points here so that you
Yeah.
also feel comfortable, like why I also have joined Web3.
Yeah, Prashant, please.
So
Yeah. Love to know.
one of the reasons for me to
Yeah.
join the Web3 is the landscape of innovation which it has provided to all
Yeah.
the new innovators who are coming into the space. I come from infra background. My
Mhm.
background has always been into infra, building infra, that like looking into how exactly you can scale and everything.
Yeah.
But there were very less scope of innovation was left, because all of those innovation which happened in infra in the Web 2 was being done by a lot of Web 2 big players, like in
Yeah,
terms of
of
like
course.
Amazon doing a lot of these things. And if you're doing innovation, most likely you will get acquired by them. So
Yeah.
tons of everything which were happening. And then the second thing which you pointed very rightly, and that is where I'll also come into as we kind of discuss, is
Yeah.
about borderless economy. Like I'll tell you one scenario, and which really boosted. And since that day until today, whenever I build in Web3, I always remember that day. I was just forming a company. I had to do one transaction from a company which was sitting in US that point of time. And to do that transaction, I literally had to rub my nose around here and there in government entities, and then going to different bank accounts, telling them, hey, you know what, guys, I'm doing a legit transaction. Even though that transaction was not even $1 million, it was hardly around $500 worth. Okay.
Yeah.
Then too, I have to go for all of these things while $1 million transaction, which was happening in the background, which we all of us know how it is happening, it is still happening with the same pace. But the problem is being faced by the normal people like us who
Yeah.
were trying to establish certain business.
Yeah.
And that really motivated me that day, is to go and build for Web3. There's no better future than this, where we create a borderless economy. And that is what has been my motivation. And then, as you said, like as we move forward, there were tons of different things which changed, and we kind of move into something else. But since your introduction was already pending, I did not ask you to introduce yourself, because when I was going through your profile on LinkedIn, I was searching about you, and everywhere just trying to find out like more and more detailed info about you. Found really interesting things, right? So you came from, you're not from tech background, right? So you came from what I can see, like from the social profile of yours.
Yeah.
You're not from tech background, but you are now working in a tech industry which is very heavily dominated by tech folks, right? So I would love to understand this, and because this is going to helpful for a lot of founders who are aspiring to come from non-tech background,
Yeah.
but they want to contribute to the Web3. So what has been your journey so far around that? Like from being, I can see like you have been a lawyer as well. You have also worked with a secretary at Clinton's office as well, right? So multiple things which you have done in your journey. So would love to hear that part of your story as well, is like how that journey kind of looked like so far.
Yeah, so I would say that I've always been sort of tech adjacent in the sense that I did my undergrad at Stanford, and no shortage of technology or aspiring founders there. And so that's really what began my tech journey. So I graduated from Stanford around 2006 timeframe. And so you're already starting to see the big heyday of Google. Facebook was starting to grow like bonkers. And I mean, Apple had been there for a long time already. It was really finding its footing. And so what we now know as big tech was starting to really grow at that point. And you're right that I started my career as a corporate lawyer. So I thought that I would go into a life of legal practice and public service. So you mentioned the Clinton campaign and the Biden campaign. So served on 2 presidential campaigns so far. But I, midway through that journey, I always knew that I wanted to become a startup entrepreneur, because you can either be sort of sitting around the table and advising people on what the right decisions are, or you can make the decisions yourselves. And so I had some ideas about cool things that could be done with some of the cutting edge technologies that were emerging at the time. And this was around 2012, 2013 timeframe. Back then, AI was the hot thing. It fizzled out for a while, but back then, I remember a lot of people were talking about it. It wasn't generative AI in the sense that we understand it now. It was more around natural language processing. Cute, right? Back then, that's what we were obsessing about. So my first foray into tech, I needed to find that exit that made a lot of sense. Now, this probably is just suited more to my personality type, where a lot of times the way that people make the transition away from, say, law or banking or consulting, accounting, or, these sort of more professional services oriented industries that are working with tech companies, a lot of the times people make the transition away by going in-house in the same function. So in other words, they become a lawyer for a company, or they become, if you're a banker, you become finance or corporate development or business development, let's say, for a company. And then if you are interested in actually getting into a really core business function, or if you want to become an entrepreneur, then you can transition after that. So I am not known for being wildly patient. So I thought, I don't think I want to hang around in a company in a function that doesn't really suit me, that I've already decided is not really for me. So I was always looking for sort of the right opportunity, and it came up in Globality. And the nice thing about Globality is it is founded by a CEO who was also a former lawyer, so had some understanding of what qualities to look for, really, and someone who is looking to make that transition from law into an early team at a startup. So I headed up business development there and founded and ran their Asia operations as well. I was there for about a year and a half. And then we got backed by SoftBank and entered a period of hyper scaling, had reached unicorn status at that point. And we were on our way. I mean, it was an immensely rewarding experience. But also around that time was when I discovered blockchain. And I felt that I was ready to be a founder at that point. I had learned a lot about what to do in a startup, obviously had a business background before that. And so, made the leap. But for anyone who is looking to get into tech or into Web3 and you don't necessarily have a technical background, let's say, or your background hasn't been entirely in tech companies, it sounds very trite, but in the end, you ultimately want to look for the right fit. So you may have an ideal in mind in terms of, this is a company that I want to join, or this is a kind of project that I want to work on. But at the end of the day, the project or the next role that is right for you is one that actually takes advantage of your skill sets. And those roles do exist. Those projects do exist. You may have to find them over a longer time frame, but they certainly exist. So what I would encourage people to do is just, hunt, really, is to put yourself out there, learn as much as you can, and make yourself valuable. At the end of the day, I mean, especially in a startup environment, especially in Web3, you are pretty much as valuable as your skill set is. So I would encourage people to just, hustle hard to get to that next gig.
So let me ask you just a follow-on question on this one. And it is quite interesting one, because you have pointed it very well, is like, just try to find out your best company and best people to work with and then go and work with them. A lot of times, I'll be very honest, because I have not found my journey or my right fit, I think, till my 6 years of experience into building into Web2. Even though I came from that IQ set and all of those things. But it can happen with a lot of other people as well, the same thing which happened with me. But there were a few things which I was kind of focused that point of time. And that question was, like, most of the time I used to ask in my head, is it money or is it skills first? I'm going to throw that question to you as well. Let's say if I'm finding a job, I found a right match for me. Like, I found a match which made in heaven, kind of a match, or even little lower than that. But the money which was being offered was not up to the mark which I was expecting. So a lot of times it's happening in Web3, where tons of people or tons of different developers from different skill sets, not even developers, from legal angle, from CAs, from different vertical of the professional career, they try to come into the Web3. And most of the time they look at the money angle of it. They don't look at the skill set and the broader vision till the time they spend their 2 years or 3 years into this life of Web3, right? So what is your take on that? Like, what shall a person should focus on?
That is a tough question, because it's a very personal question, Prashant. But I'm glad you asked it, because I would say this. So money is a very legitimate part of the decision-making process, because let's say, put it this way, if you are comfortable and you're secure in sort of your personal circumstances, then I would encourage you to, of course, focus on the skill set, even if it means taking a pay cut, even if it means that, say, most of your compensation is in volatile tokens. I would strongly consider making the leap so that you can get into this industry. And until you are in it, you don't truly understand it, and you can't truly start building your profile within it. So if you are committed to working in Web3 and you're passionate about it, then I would encourage people to get in as soon as possible, because this, and you know this, Prashant, this industry changes so quickly. And even for those of us who are in it, it's very, very hard to catch up on the day to day. So I would encourage people, if you can, to not think about the money as much. But having said that, let's say that you don't quite have that that luxury, so you do have to consider compensation. At that point, you have several different profiles of people within Web3. This is true for any industry, but in Web3 it's particularly pronounced. So there are some people for whom risk is something that's very comfortable for them. So if they are making a ton of money one year and then the next year they lose it all, they're emotionally okay with that. If you are that sort of person, then great, go for it. Don't think about the money too much. But most reasonable people, I guess, don't think that way. And there is some emotional hit when you see yourself losing a ton. So in that case, I would just ask yourself, what exactly is your risk tolerance here? Because if you fight hard enough, you can make a lot of situations more or less work out. But is that going to be worth it to you? And if the answer is no, that's okay. That's completely okay. It just means that you have to find the role that is right for you. So short answer, if you don't want to keep all those different factors in your mind, is if you are able to not think about the money too hard, then I would focus primarily on the skill set, what you're going to learn, the experience. The team is incredibly important, the people that you're going to be working with. But if money is a consideration, that is totally legitimate. And the right role for you is going to satisfy what you need on the money front. So that's how I would think of it if you're picking between the two.
I think it's one of the legitimate answers, right? It totally depends on, I think this also your experience, which kind of spoken now, because you might have already seen that journey into different angle, and you might have already hired tons of other people as well while you were kind of working on. And I also still believe on the same thing, because I've seen people commenting, and some gurus into the space commenting is like, work for skills, don't work for money. Some gurus commenting like, work for money, don't work for skills. So first thing first, don't fall in all of these lines. These lines are meant for specific audiences. If you are falling into that category, then only go for it. If you are not, then please don't. Take your decision, see how much deep in water you are, and then go ahead and take a decision depending on that. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for being honest on that answer. Basically, generally people try to orient into one of the opinion of it is like money, or sometimes we will go with the skills. But it was a good answer. It also proves like you have worked with politicians as well. So you had a really great diplomatic answer here. But coming back to again on few things as well, as you guys are building Saga, and I have been in Austin, I see like how you guys work and do a lot of things, and do a lot of things in the Saga as well. Can you please shed some light on Saga in terms of like what exactly you guys are trying to do? So that is what we want to understand.
So fundamentally, this has become our mission statement, is we want to enable crazies to dream their craziest dreams and feel loved and supported. So we want developers, creators, even users who don't think of themselves as professional artists to come onto Saga and nevertheless create something absolutely magical and feel loved and supported throughout the entire journey. Now, what does that mean concretely? So Saga, the team took a look at the infrastructure that was available to developers in Web3. And frankly, what we found was that no infrastructure was ever exactly what developers needed when they needed it. So if you are a developer that's just starting out, you just learned yesterday what a smart contract is, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and start deploying on a big monolithic chain. So when we say monolithic chain, we mean things like Ethereum, Solana. These are the chains that most people are probably pretty familiar with. And what you find very quickly is that you are on a chain, you're on a block space that is shared with multiple other applications. And so if those applications should have more traffic, then all of a sudden you face more congestion and throughput issues. And your costs are generally quite high and variable because, again, you're sharing the space with other people. So what you find as a developer is that this system is really no longer working for you. But then at that point, you're going to have to undertake the task of transitioning over to your own chain, which is very daunting for people like Axie Infinity in the gaming space. Ronin has been a really tough journey for them. For people like DYDX, who have all the resources in the world, they have had a challenging journey as well, which they are completing now. But even with all of their engineering resources, all of their know-how, all the support from the Cosmos ecosystem, which is what they're migrating to, they've had their own challenges. It's taken over a year. So for a developer, there's no great path, in other words, to establishing yourself and then scaling your application. So what we're doing at Saga is we're saying get onto your own dedicated block space immediately. It takes 2 minutes to get onto your own chain. You don't have to think about the security layer at all. And you don't have to think about isolating yourself either. That's usually the other knock on app chains or rollups, is that it's an isolated instance. So in this particular case, because we are on Cosmos, everything is connected through IBC. So you have access to the wider Saga community, of course, and then to any ecosystem that we bridge to or that is migrating onto Saga. So get onto your own dedicated space. It is the highest performance environment possible for blockchain development, and it is your own controlled environment in which to develop. If you choose to make yourself gasless, which I think most applications are going to trend that way to improve the user experience, that is baked into the Saga system. So in many ways at Saga, what we aspire to do is we aspire to build an infrastructure layer that would actually make it viable for developers in Web3 to go from nothing to the next great application in this space. So that is what Saga is all about. It's about celebrating the spirit of creativity that motivates all of Web3.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And when you kind of pointed it out, it's like Louis Vuitton versus some local brand on
Yeah.
Ethereum chain, right?
Yeah.
When Louis Vuitton get launched on Ethereum, that other so it's like at least they have different roads and the streets and people can line up so that other shops can't be blocked. But it is not similar to what you see on chain, right? So if anyone is running some bigger show, your show will be like Rug Pull. So that is what it means, right? In a very high level, if we kind of look at. So I believe that is something which is amazing you guys are doing. And our team has already been looking into, we have already passed on few deals like Link, one of the gaming engine, which was trying to build. We have been supporting them for a very long. I think they are already on Saga now. They're trying to build something on Saga. So a lot of folks will keep on doing that. But there is one more thing which I just wanted to understand from you. I think when you have put out this point, this makes a lot of sense to kind of ask this to you, is when we talk about the app chain, basically nothing but it's an app chain, right? So an app specific chain which is going to spin up having its own space, gasless or high throughput, whatever you kind of define, you define it and you just launch it. But if you kind of look at the current market of the entire Web3 space, what do you think is like, what will be the optimal way of launching these chains in a much more optimized fashion? When I say much more optimized fashion, so let's say if I'm a developer, for example, I want to launch, and I think your current name is Casio. So the Casio, so let's say if I want to get onboarded on Casio, what would be the cost which will be included in that? Now, the reason I'm asking this cost, because we come from India and we live in Asian countries. And for us, the cost matters a lot. So in that term, what exactly, like how exactly it looks like for a developers and how much effective it will be for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a question that Web3 developers should not be afraid to ask. So I think that the culture in Web3 so far, to be very open and honest about this, and Prashant, thank you for offering a space for people to say things like this. But I think that Web3, it's necessary for us to be more or less insular. So when you're in Web3, you're passionate about Web3, you hate Web2, and anyone who doesn't understand Web3, you want them to use your products, but there is this sort of tribal passion around it. And then within Web3, there's a tribal passion around specific ecosystems. So if you're all in on ETH, you're an ETH maxi, for instance, you don't want to talk to anyone from Avalanche. That's just one example, right? You mentioned earlier that I have a little bit of political experience. Yeah. So on the one hand, I recognize this dynamic. On the other hand, I recognize that for those of us who are founders and leaders in this space, it's really incumbent upon us to fight against that instinct. But when you have that sort of environment, I think, asking things like cost almost felt a little taboo If you were to say, oh, it's so expensive for me to build in this ecosystem, on the one hand, that is true. And that's a problem that I think the foundations recognize they would have to correct for. But on the other hand, you have other people saying, well, it's an honor to like hold this token when you want to be a maxi for this token. But I think for developers, because what we find is that most Web3 developers, either they are working on a startup, they're working on a project, or they have the aspiration to start their own projects. They're incredibly entrepreneurial in Web3. And so, of course, you have to think about the cost of your infrastructure. So at Saga, short answer to your question is Casio is free for everyone to use right now because it is our private testnet, and we wanted to make it free for people to play on it. Having said that, we are subsidizing the cost. So we are keenly aware of how much it costs. It's about $500 per chainlet per month. So to have your own chain every month, it's about $500. Now, when we launch mainnet later this year, we are looking to add in a lot of optimizations. So at that point, it's going to be even less than $500 per month. So our CTO's dream is that it goes all the way down to say $100 per month or even less than that, to the point where every developer can have their own chainlet running, regardless of whether they're actually actively building on it or not. Because for many of us who are AWS users, we have instances floating around probably that we've completely forgotten about, right? And frankly, that's how AWS makes a lot of its money. But that is the dream, to make block space and developer environments in particular so plentiful and cheap, frankly, that it's easy for developers to just stand these things up as they need during a really hectic development process and then stand them down once things get a little lighter. But that's what the cost structure looks like. And because we are gasless, it means that is all that's being paid. So it's not like you pay $500 per month now, but you have a lot of gas fees on top of that. No, it's $500 for you. And if you don't choose to pass that along to your users, it's entirely free for them.
That is awesome. I think $500 is not a very heavy ask. I'll be very honest, to run a chain, and that to an app chain where you can save hundreds of thousands of your engineering costs, right? Making that happen. I believe you might have already seen that with DivideX and other people kind of doing that, investing a lot of money and also not is still able to like stabilize the entire system as such. We were also looking at Saga is to optimize the cost. And the reason I have asked this question is, as you mentioned, it was a taboo, right? So people are very afraid to ask, is it like, shall I ask this question to somebody or not? Like, is it like, am I not going to be like called as somebody who's just always be talking about money, money, money? But at Spheron, our philosophy has always been same, is how we can optimize the cost. So for example, the same thing, just to give you the example, like what you have just told, like $100 one. When we started, for the AWS build I'm talking about, when we started like building initially, I'll be very honest, we were using AWS. And then as we kind of move forward, our transition was we have to switch as soon as possible so that we can lower our cost and use this cost to fund and to fuel our growth in terms of like giving out the bounties, sponsoring events, and tons of different things around that thing. And we have saved around 80%. Now our AWS cost come around, earlier it was around $4,000. Now it is coming around $600.
That's great. Fantastic.
So we have done a lot of optimization. That is one of the reasons like I have asked that is to kind of understand your thought process, because most of these applets, most of these chainlets, which will be like going to be spinning these nodes, that might possible. Let's say there is a village in my town, for example, where I come from, and their town kind of wants to run this chainlet or applet. They can't afford this much money, right? So they have to have something which is very cost optimistic, and I believe you guys are already up to it, and we are always be there looking out to kind of help you guys also to optimize, and I think we are already working together, so we'll definitely do that. So thank you so much for answering that very honestly again, Rebecca. So you have been honest throughout the entire call.
Thank you for that. I mean, our engineers are already in love with Spheron. This is an incredibly valuable service that you guys are providing. And I mean, it's so evident in how effectively you personally run things that A, you're able to optimize costs to that level, but B, that you guys have shipped reliably in such a short amount of time. So yeah, I mean, it's been such a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much, and we'll keep on working. But anyways, let's come back to again on the few more questions which is already left.
Of course.
So this question is mostly around the funding side, and this is mostly going to be targeting around the people who are building the startup into the space. So for example, if somebody is coming to Saga, they might be building something, right? And it is also evident building in Web3 is not cheap. It's costly.
It's
It's
costly.
a
Yeah.
costly business. Okay.
Yeah.
And that too, after seeing a lot of founders around us, I personally live very optimistic life. I live very low life where I don't go with all of those fancy Ferraris, Lambo, or whatever driving here and there. But there are multiple folks who kind of do it into this space, and that creates a different image altogether for the founders of
Mhm.
the Web3 into the other people who are aspiring to become.
Yeah.
So just to not to buy Lambo or something, but to kind of have enough fund
Yeah.
to go and build what I am more passionate about.
Yeah.
What are the advices you will give? Because I can imagine you guys must, if you guys must have raised some funds.
Hmm.
And if you have raised that, or in your previous journey as well, what was the few thing which a founder should keep in mind going for any kind of funding round into the future?
Yeah, I would say that it definitely depends on the market that you're raising in. I would say this current market is one of the most difficult environments that we have seen. So I was just talking to a founder earlier today, and I was saying, I've been in crypto for a little while now, and the first massive bear market around 2018, 2019 timeframe, it was worse in the sense that we didn't even know if this industry was going to survive. A lot of people held their treasuries in ETH, so we all know how that went, and the projects died off, and we didn't know whether liquidity was going to come into the system. Altcoins at that point were just, it was a very dirty term. And now, I mean, we have a long tail of coins. So it was worse back then because it was more of an existential problem. But ironically, I think people are having a really difficult time right now because we have established so much, we have built so much. And so there's more to protect. At the same time, like you said, I mean, you see the images of certain crypto influencers, let's say, in their Lamborghinis and their Ferraris, the Louis Vuitton bags, and you think to yourself, there should be plentiful capital. But the truth of the matter is when everyone is 98, 99% down, there is no capital. And so it's a very, very difficult market to fundraise in. And we see that with our innovators, at Saga. So we just closed cohort 4 of our innovator program, which is our ecosystem program. And is 224 projects now that are building on Saga. We have personal connections with each and every one of our innovators. Those relationships are the most important thing to us. And so we hear about their journeys. And I would say, when you are fundraising, a few things to keep in mind. First and foremost, hold your nerve, because I think that sometimes when people hear criticism from VCs or they hear questions from VCs that kind of make it clear that person didn't quite understand what it is you're building, you take it pretty hard because you have sacrificed so much and you have worked so hard and put in so much time into this project. And it doesn't seem like people are really understanding it or are getting into it. And that can be just emotionally very difficult. But, rely on your team at that point. Definitely have faith in yourself and hold your nerve. I would encourage people first and foremost to hold their nerve through a fundraising process. I would also say, understand that a fundraising process is meant to be difficult. So it could be the case that you are a hot project and, A16Z is throwing money your way. And it's not happening in this cycle, but let's just say in a bull cycle, you hear stories about these fundraises that get done very, very quickly. Everyone wants in, and you think to yourself, well, if I were a good enough founder, that would happen to me. That's not true. The vast majority of fundraisers are meant to be difficult. They're meant to be difficult. You are asking somebody to entrust their capital with you, and Web3 is not cheap. So you're asking them to entrust a good amount of money with you. So of course, it's meant to be a difficult process. I would just set expectations right with yourself in terms of how this period is going to run while you are fundraising. The third thing I would say is, investors, you have to understand that they see a lot. Every day, let's say they have anywhere from 5 to 10 meetings with completely different projects. So you are in your project 24/7. So you know all the details, you know everything about your space. The person that you're talking to on the other end, they're a really smart person, but they aren't spending the same amount of time. So a lot of things you're going to have to spell out for them. So I would say that you should treat your fundraising conversations like conversations where there's a back and forth about what this industry is all about. What is it that you're building? What is its position within this industry? And so I would treat it as a sort of collaborative thing with whatever investor you're pitching to. And then the fourth thing, which is I'll probably stop there because it's a long enough list. The fourth thing is you should really be on the lookout for investors that understand you quite well. So I would say that Web3 investing, despite the fact that it has matured a lot and there's a lot more capital in this space and there are a lot more expectations from LPs, it is still very different from Web2. So Web2 fundraising, it's very structured, let's say. So, you do the initial pitch, there's an expectation that there's a deck there. There's going to be some data room that has all of your documentation, perhaps all of your contracts, your offer letters, your cap tables, et cetera. All of that's going to be in that data room. And the VC is going to take its time going through the diligence process. Web3 is different. So deals can take a little longer to get done, but by and large, you should feel that chemistry very early on. So within the first 2 calls, you as a founder, you should have a sense, like, do I get along with this person? Do they seem to understand what it is that we're building? Are they enthusiastic about it? If you don't feel that chemistry, move on. It's like dating, move on. Don't get invested. And honestly, I think it not only is sort of the most emotionally healthy way to approach it, but also probably the most accurate way to approach it. You really want to look for those investors who will good or bad for you. And that means in good times, they make all the introductions in the world. They participate in your hackathons, let's say, as judges, or they'll be open to introductions from you when you have projects to introduce to them. And in bad times, I mean, they will support you should anything happen to the project. So those are the investors that you're looking for regardless. But I would say those are some things to keep in mind. But first and foremost, though, a lot can happen in a bear market. When everyone is 99% down, a lot can happen. So the most important thing to remember is, keep your head up, hold your nerve.
So the reason I was asking this question is because at Spheron, we also work with a lot of founders. Most of the times they ping us, they try to ask us like how you guys were able to do that and all of those things. I used to tell them it's like there is always a market and there is a timing which defines most of things, and narrative as well. And if you time the market rightly, you will time the money. So money is direct proportional to like market and time as well. So that is what it is. But thank you so much, Rebecca, for kind of shedding that light on that area. And again, to all the founders who are going to be raising in this bear market, if you are raising in this bear market, be ready to hear more no's versus more yes. And I think yes will be like around 10% or 5%. I don't know like what can be the percentage here.
Yeah.
But in Indian market, if I specifically talk about 73% or 80% VC money kind of did not got deployed this year alone. So it is still idle and dying somewhere. So wait for bull, as what Rebecca has just pointed, is hold your nerve. And that hold your nerve basically means is hold for the right market to come in. And once that is there, prepare now, shoot then. So it is the same strategy. It's an army strategy which you have to follow, is to prepare for a war now, keep all of your ammo with you by connecting with us, by connecting with different founders in this space, connecting with different VCs, interacting with in terms of just sharing the news, nothing much. No, don't ask for money. Don't do all of those drama. Just update and connections. And once the right time will come, you will get to know. I think most other founders has the intuition which get built is like, this is the time I should go and ask for the money. So thank you, Rebecca, again for pointing that out. Now, I'm going to ask you 2 last questions. Okay, so one question is going to be more around you and specifically, and the third will be mostly around the rapid fire, which I'm just going to throw you out 3 questions, that's it, just to understand like what is your thought processes. So this question goes to you in this way, is you are a female founder in Web3 and you will find, I know you might have been receiving this question a lot from different people into the space. I don't know if you are receiving or not. But we have not seen a lot of female founders coming into the Web3 as such. I don't want to ask you like how has been your journey so far and what not. But let me ask you this thing is when you see yourself as a female founder, what is the advice which you want to give out to the female founders who are, even if they are not planning to, or they are even thinking of, what is the next step they should take at least to kind of move their one step forward into this industry? Just a motivation, like why they should join.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is maybe a 3-part answer here, Prashant. Thank you for asking this question. It is something that I've thought a great deal about, obviously. The first thing is, because I do have something of a political background, I'm going to use this as an analogy. So one of the officials from the Obama administration a while back, her name is Janet Napolitano. She was Secretary of Homeland Security. It's not important what her title is, but she had a very interesting insight, which was, when she was really, starting to grow in her political career, so becoming cabinet secretary, she's also governor of Arizona at one point. The thing that she found troubling was that there were a lot of very smart, very well-educated, ambitious women who were starting to come into the space, but they would kind of not hold themselves back necessarily, but they would aspire to things like policy positions, let's say. So, oh, I want to be a policy advisor for a candidate, or I want to be, on the central staff for a candidate. They never wanted to be the candidate themselves. And so she was always encouraging them, you have ideas, you can speak, you have charisma, you connect well with people. Why don't you run for office? And for a lot of these women, it was mind blowing. Like it just was never considered the possibility that they themselves could be the candidate. And I think we suffer from that a little bit, not just in Web3. Definitely in Web3, it's more pronounced, but I think in Web2 as well. So I would say that, women like Sheryl Sandberg, for instance, probably most famously, opened a lot of doors for women. But I don't think, and again, being very open here, I don't think that women are going to reach the level that we need to be at to be truly considered legit founders in technology until you are the founder. So not that you're supporting a male founder, but that you are the founder yourself. And so I would encourage women to go ahead and take that step. If you have ideas, if you think that you can motivate people and execute on a vision, you have everything that is necessary to be a great founder. So I would take that step. So that's the first thing I would tell women. Second thing is, Web3 is, all of tech is pretty male dominated, but Web3 in particular, I would say that it is very heavily male dominated. And there are comments that are made to women for sure that are not wonderful. What I would say is this for women who, they hear that and they're affected by it. So as you get more senior in your career, one of the most important skill sets you can have is to truly understand what people are thinking and feeling without them actually saying it. So perceptiveness, in other words, about other people is incredibly important. So when you hear comments like that, notice it because you don't want to dull that perceptiveness. It is a very important and hard fought skill set. So notice it when such comments are made, but don't let it affect you emotionally. I would say don't get angry or sad or tired because that is all energy that is wasted on pretty useless emotions, frankly, when honestly, you could be moving so much farther if you just focused on building and on the people who ultimately rely on you. So I would encourage women who go into this space to keep that mindset intact because otherwise it can get very challenging and very taxing. And just, it's not great for long-term growth in this industry. So I promised you a three-prong answer, but I think that those two actually encapsulate it pretty well. That would be my advice to women going into this space. Go for it. And then again, there's this theme of holding your nerve. I would say that the second part of the answer is a variation on that, specifically for women in this space is hold your nerve. You have a lot to offer, and I wouldn't allow anyone to take that away from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for pointing that out. And I have a really high respect for the female founders who are coming into this space. And I personally, we were trying to find a lot of people. We literally have interviewed multiple tons of women into the space to kind of join Spheron. But unfortunately, we could not able to find one yet. And it's also quite difficult to kind of find the right. And I just wanted to add my point here as well. Is it's not like we as Web3 founders or even in the space, people are not looking at. They all are looking at. Believe me, my entire team has men. Okay, all the boys, 25 to 30, all energetic and everything, right? And that is what Rebecca has just pointed out. Is if you are into this space, you have to be energetic, emotionally balanced, and make sure once you join in, hold your nerves. When you say hold your nerve, that basically means don't get offended with some languages which might up and down, or somebody is talking something and you don't want to hear that. I would highly recommend to just come because this entire space is all new. The way we all will shape together, this is how it is going to grow as a tree. So I really want personally to have more and more female joining into this space. But thank you, Rebecca, for pointing that out. Coming to our last question, which is going to be rapid fire. You have to choose one. You cannot be diplomatic there. Okay. And you should not just avoid that. But again, if you feel like this is something which is overwhelming for you, or you don't want to just choose that, it is going to be against your ethos, but go ahead and do that. But please choose one. Okay. So the first thing is Ethereum. And since we already had the discussion in the earlier, you pointed out that. So it is around the same thing. Ethereum or Bitcoin?
Oh, Ethereum.
Okay. So mobile or desktop wallet?
Mobile.
Okay. Which one is better at this point of time while you are sitting, while we are talking, Web2 or Web3?
Well, better is, I mean, it's a loaded term. Um, I would, I mean, from my personal preference, Web3. I mean, Web2 is obviously so much more mature and so much farther along. And I think for most users out there, Web2 is still the only area of technology that is viable. Web3 is unusable for a lot of people, to be very honest. But the level of innovation that you see in Web3 cannot be matched anywhere in Web2.
But Web3 is fun.
Web3 is fun. That's it.
Yeah,
That's important.
yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Rebecca, for being on the show. This is called Proof of
Yeah.
Builders, and we make sure like we interview builders like builders. We ask the tough questions like what we have asked today. A lot of these questions might not have been asked in the open, in the public, or somewhere else. But as a founder, I always wanted to inspire and also like allow our fellow founders to kind of inspire other people to come and join the Web3 wagons at this stage of ours. So thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for adding one more feather into the POB episode. Any last comments, or else we'll wrap it up. Thank you so
No,
much, Rebecca.
absolutely. Prashant, is a complete pleasure to be on here. And thank you again for an incredible interview. I mean, I do a lot of these. And so I can tell that you have a commitment to making this as raw and as fun as possible. So I really appreciate that. You have a way of drawing out very open responses from founders, which is fantastic. And it's just a great resource, I think, for other founders out there. So really appreciate your having me on and for a great conversation. And honestly, as a parting note, I would just say to founders in this space, because I'm sure that this episode will get published pretty quickly, is by the time we go on air here, I don't think the bear market will be over quite yet. I think we still have at least a few more months to go. And I would just encourage founders to keep building, really keep building, keep motivating your team. Don't let the energy level drop, because A, what you're doing is inherently worthwhile. And B, when the bull market comes, you will no longer have time to build. Believe you and me, when there's so many there's so many opportunities to pursue. You're going to be traveling a lot, and there's so many different things to keep track of. There won't be time for this kind of thoughtful, measured building, and you'll look back fondly when you had more time for that. So I know it's a difficult period, but take advantage of it as best you can. And yeah, Prashant's always available as a resource. I think Spiron is a great hub for builders. Saga is the same. We aspire to be there for our innovators in the greater community. So definitely reach out anytime you need to talk to someone, or you would like advice on anything, or also, obviously, if you are interested in building, then we are always open to hearing from you.
Last point: meditate.
Yeah.
And ship.
Yes, meditate and ship. That's fantastic. Oh, it's fabulous.
So this market is all about meditate and ship. So thank you so much, Rebecca.